All right, welcome to Cars Around the World, where me as your host, we're going to discuss about automobiles not produced in, well, America, because we're in Las Vegas. So the segment of this is to really explore different countries that have automobiles that aren't well known. Well, I shouldn't really say that, but less known than, like, let's say Mercedes, BMW, Ford, things like that. Now, in this first episode, we're going to talk about something near and dear to my heart. And if you can tell, we're going to talk about the Soviet Union. Now, with the Soviet Union, there was a lot of interesting cars built, we'll say that. Of course, they tried competing with the U.S. and, Western, I guess you can say, Western spy automakers. And some of them were decent, but let's just kind of get into it. My name is Evo, and you're watching God Next. Now, the first car we're really going to talk about today is the Lada. That's the most famous Soviet Union car anyone's ever seen. And there's a few of them in the U.S. now, and it's like a meme, right? Driving a Lada around, it's like a meme. And the Lada, what I really want to say before we really get into it is, in this video, I'm really going to focus on, I want to say passenger cars. So cars for the people, very socialist term, but cars for the people. So, of course, the Soviet Union built a lot of military trucks and off-road trucks and whatnot. I'm not really going to touch on that much. I'm going to more focus on the cars that people could have bought. An average Soviet Union citizen, which wasn't most people because most people couldn't afford it. But regardless, you guys get what I'm talking about. Cars that people could go out and buy, not military trucks. So the first one, of course, the Lada, most famous. It was built by AutoVAZ, which was like the company that built Lada, the VAZ. Now, as you guys can tell by my shirt or the jersey, I'm from Bulgaria. Bulgaria used to be part of the Soviet Union, so I've driven Ladas, I've ridden in Ladas. Most of the cars I'm going to talk about, I've either been in them or I've driven them. So I have experience with some of them. Now, the Lada really wasn't even a Soviet Union concoction. It was a Fiat. It started life by the president of VAZ, the owner and the CEO, or not owner because the government owned it, but the CEO and president of the company meeting with the chairman, CEO, and grandson of the original creator of Fiat. The Lada was based off of the Fiat 124, which was a regular passenger sedan that Fiat was building for like the Italian market, French, German, etc. So just a regular car. Think about it like the Camry. It's literally like a Camry at that time. Now, the Soviets didn't have a platform for a car. They did have another one, but VAZ didn't have a platform. They built trucks. So the Lada was based off of the Fiat 124. It was just a more rugged, dumbed down, cheaper version because the Soviet Union didn't have the crazy amount of money to spend on this car. Now, this thing came with a slew of powerful and just fire-breathing engines, everything from a 1.2 liter four-cylinder making like 70 horsepower to like a 1.8 liter fire-breathing four-cylinder making 110 horsepower. You guys get the joke. The thing was not powerful. It's slow as molasses. They're all manual. None of them were automatic because an automatic wasn't a thing back in the Soviet Union. All of them were stick shift. They all had actually a heater in the car was an option. I don't think AC was an option. I really don't think so. I think it was more of a afterthought. I think you could have put it on after, like with an aftermarket company. Honestly, I don't even know. I mean, I wasn't alive at that time, but most of the ones I've driven have been in, they don't have ACs. That wasn't a thing. But mostly because the places that the cars were in never really needed them because in Russia, I mean, how hot does it get over the summer? 35, 36 degrees Celsius? I mean, it's like, nothing crazy. But, I mean, the car was the car. It's very famous for a reason. The thing was built in like the 50s and it ended production, I think, in like 2015. It was the same dang car for 50, 60 years. They didn't change anything. It was the same thing. They just added some stuff on the interior. But nonetheless, it's a very rugged and dependable car. I must say that. All the ones I've ever been, these things go for miles and miles or kilometers in general. And, most of the ones that I've been in, the people that use them, they use them for wood. So they call it contraband back where I'm from. They go out in the woods and they chop down trees and take them back to their house to use them for the winter for a thing, which they consider illegal because you're illegally chopping down wood. But nonetheless, that's what we do where I'm from in Bulgaria. But yeah, that's the first car. Now, the second car we're going to talk about is the one that actually the first passenger car that the Soviet Union built. It's called the Moskvich, or that's how the English say the Moskvich. I call it the Moskvich, that's just Bulgarian, but that's the first one, which this is what it looks like. So this was the first official passenger car from the Soviet Union, and it was literally the same thing as the Lada, just basic, like same thing. Heater, 4-speed manual transmission, 4-cylinder that made no power, an interior that looked like it was built and basically at the same factory as the AK-47. And yeah, that's it. You got 4 windows that cranked. Yeah, 4 tires. So you got places. That's it. That's all you needed. People didn't need Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, heated, massaging, cooled seats. It wasn't a thing. Obviously, I'm joking around, but these were very basic cars. You know, of course, in the U.S., you had Cadillacs that had AC systems. They had convertibles. They had all this crazy stuff for the time. But these Moskviches and the Ladas didn't have any of that because they were meant to be dirt cheap cars for basically the poor population of the Soviet Union, which was most people. Unless you were involved in the government or some shady stuff. A lot of people were. Most people were poor, and then rich people. So there wasn't really a middle class sort of thing. I mean, you could say there was a middle class, but it wasn't really a middle class, if you guys get what I'm saying. But yeah, I mean, Moskvich, very similar thing to the Lada. Like I said, 4-cylinder, super slow, made out of steel. So, I mean, there's a famous episode out there of Top Gear of Jeremy Clarkson comparing, like, funny enough, a Lada versus a Aston Martin. Of course, the Aston's, like, better in every way. And he goes, but if Jeremy Clarkson goes, if I take this hammer, and he's holding like a metal hammer, and he goes, if I hit this Aston Martin, it's going to go straight through the hood and hit the engine. And then he literally goes up to the Lada and just starts hitting the Lada. And the hammer bounces off the car because the whole car is made out of like steel. I mean, it's, you know, it was made to last. I mean, it didn't last all much because of rust and everything, but it was meant to last for years and years and years because you got to think about it this way. Again, most people were poor. So they bought this one car. That was the only car they were ever going to buy for the rest of their lives, if we're being honest here. Unless you were a doctor, lawyer, something, or involved in the government, never really had crazy cars. Now, speaking of the government, there was a very special car that was built by a company specifically for government officials. And if you guys know what I'm talking about the Chica. The Chica was, I mean, this was the car to have, right? You wanted to show you have class. You're at the top of the socialist communist regime. You're somebody in the government, you drove a Chica. Now, the reason why is because this car was literally modeled after Cadillacs from the U.S. I mean, this was luxury. You had leather seats, leather everywhere. It had heater. They probably had AC systems. It was like the car. Like, and most of them were black, which there was actually a funny rumor, and it kind of escapes my mind, but the story was, if you see a black Chica at night, sort of driving around, that was probably somebody from the KGB or the communist like government secret service, and you did not want to be seen. Like if their car followed you, you were, let's just say you might have never been seen again because it was driven by high-end KGB government officials. But most of them were black for the sole reason of they were government diplomat cars. So black Chicas, they were like, that was, you know, the car. Now, there were other cars, of course. You had things like the Trabant. That's another really famous one. That wasn't built by the Soviet Union. Well, not like Russia. That was built by East Germany. So the Trabant, it literally uses a chainsaw engine, like a motorcycle engine. It's a 2-stroke, little engine, but it's a crazy looking car. I've driven one. I gotta tell you guys, you get revving this thing all the way out. I think it's a 2-speed or a 3-speed. Super slow. But again, it was meant to really take you to these small places, you know, or not small places, but like you were meant to go to work with it and go home, or you were meant to go vacation somewhere. But these weren't like, you know, big cars like how you had the huge Cadillacs and Lincolns in the U.S. These were tiny little cars for tiny little roads. That's kind of pretty much it. I mean, really, really interesting cars from a really interesting era. They weren't built to be luxurious. They weren't built to be flashy. They were built to get a job done, get you to work, get you home, get you to the beach, get you home. That's it. I mean, they weren't built to be Lamborghinis or Ferraris. That wasn't the whole point of them. People didn't have money like that back then in the Soviet Union. And they're really a product of their time. I mean, now they're cool. You know, people see them now and they're like, oh my God, what is that thing? Like, I'd love to have one. But when you drive one, they drive like shit. Like, I'm being honest and apologize for the words, but they drive really bad. Like, they're rough. They ride like crap and they're slow. They're not modern day cars, I guess we'll just say that, but they sure are built to last. I mean, these things will run forever. So let me know down below what you guys think. If you're from an ex-Soviet country, you've probably seen these things before. I know I missed a lot of cars, but let me know down below what I missed, or let me know if I got something wrong, which I'm pretty sure I got a lot of it right, because again, I grew up with those things. I'm from Bulgaria. I grew up with this kind of stuff. So let me know down below what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next episode.